Wholeness, welcome. Today I've got Dan Esposito with me. Dan, what's happening?
How are you? Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for doing this last minute. I got a last minute cancellation, and Dan was able to come on, so I really appreciate that. So I want to just do a disclaimer up here, real up front. I'm going to go right into the deep end with this, and I don't want to cause any undue initiation, so I try to keep it a little bit. I don't know. So what we're going to talk about today probably has a lot to do with pain and healing. So I don't want to misconstrue that with people with really bad intentions who are doing nefarious things and then using this information as research to build people back up that they do horrible things to, and for all kinds of nefarious purposes. Okay, so that I do not consent to any of that. This is only for people that they're honest and true and on a path of genuine healing for the benefit of themselves and all beings everywhere. Of course, we
Yeah,
all go through learning processes and change our ways, but this is not for nefarious purposes. I'll just put that right up
sure. I
front.
think it's also
Yeah.
important to disclaim this is not a treatment, cure, or a
Yes,
diagnosis.
that's
This is
another good one too.
educational and
Yes,
entertainment
absolutely.
purposes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. This is not professional medical advice, right? Neither of us
Correct.
are doctors, so we got that out of the way. So,
One doctor did
mhm.
give me an honorary doctorate, though, after going through my program. So,
Oh,
yeah.
cool. Very
Yeah,
good.
not really, literally, but, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, my standard question: who's Dan? What kind of work does he do?
I am a guy who was diagnosed with a bunch of autoimmune conditions that manifested into fibromyalgia, degenerative arthritis, being prescribed for joint replacements. And, prior to that, I played in the NFL. I had 4 contracts with the Saints and the Redskins, 2 each. And, before all these conditions started occurring at the time that my first son was being born, and he's 15. He just walked by. He's taller than me now, and I'm 6 foot tall. So, and then right before my second son was born, and he's 8, I'm 54 now, so I'm an old dad, right? And so right before he was born, about 3 months before, and his mom is quite a bit younger than me. It's 265 pounds. I was in constant agonizing, burning pain, like from head to toe. The doctors gave me the old thing, well, it's autoimmune and we don't have any cure for it. And, you might want to go see this specialist or this specialist or this specialist. But every time I'd see somebody, it just didn't make sense to me. They kind of want to blame it on my football career, which, I played 1 year of high school football. I didn't start in college till I was a senior. And then when I got to the NFL, I'm the last man on the bench. You know what I mean? I wasn't like a superstar. And so I knew, and then plus I was extremely physically active after that. So there's no possible way, because I knew a little bit about the body, that things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago do not affect your body now, no matter what anybody wants to say about fascia holding trauma from the past and those types of things. And so I got really lucky and curious, and decided, after I was actually, as soon as I first started feeling relief, is like, I need to share whatever's happening, but I need to understand what's happening. And then that led me down some really interesting paths, and that accumulated into what I call the UNDU Method. So UNDU, and I spell it that way because it's a lot of Eastern medical philosophies that I've been able to uncover the science behind. So when people understand the science behind something, they can become more intentional about their healing journey. And I thought that was super, super important, because, I'd get in a debate. And when I was in chronic pain, I was not in the mindset to be in any type of debate, right? It was, I'm angry and anxious, and, it's very reactive instead of responsive to things. And so, and then I thought, I've been experimenting with all these supplements and all of these things, and I knew that these things were working for me. And I was like, well, why are they working for me? So then I learned about this thing called mechanism of action, right? It's like, what's actually happening biochemically in the body that's causing these things. And so it kind of goes back to, who am I? So I'm in the energy business as my business, like actual energy. I broker electricity and gas. I own a brokerage. And then it turns out that, like, everything, all these mechanisms of actions are not like fluids. It's an energy exchange. It's electrons donating an electron to something to help break it down within the body. Like, if you use water, water's the ultimate scrubber. But why is that? Well, it's because it creates an energetic response called hydrolysis. Hydrolysis breaks a hydrogen bond. So when you can break a hydrogen bond inside your body, cleave it, it's kind of like Pac-Man, the body has the resources to take it out. So then I decided to create this supplement called Flexibility Fuel. And it's kind of like the barrier to entry before you go and check out my program, which I was told I should spend or should charge $3,000 to $5,000 for. I give it away for completely free, right? It fills in what I believe are all the gaps that modern medicine is missing or ignoring, because the research that's behind this program it's been published for 20 something years. Like nothing in my program is not based in actual published scientific research or the biochemistry of how the body works. And so so last year I launched the supplement in the program, and I don't do any really personal coaching, because it's like when I'm finding my way to Jesus and the all, and I realized that you can tell me anything, just like, but until I started like listening to the Bible, it started making sense, and I started feeling that spirit within inside of me. And so it's a video series that go and search for it, listen to it over and over again, understand the concepts, and it will lead you. At least for me, I started at ground zero, right? I had no idea what pain was, what happened to me. This will at least escalate your own personal healing journey. Uh, if you're suffering from these autoimmune, which is a completely fake diagnosis in modern medicine, it's very rare, but it's just thrown on everything. And start recovering from pain and stiffness that is affecting 30 to 50% of Americans these days. And not only that, but around the world. So yeah, so that's me. I'm a dad, and you know, I'm a curious guy.
Well, you're going to have to be patient with me, because when I just look at the sports world, which I don't very often, because, I write it off as sports ball. And, to me, it's like, look, basically going to a foreign country, and so to be, so that sports psychology is fascinating to me, why people do the extreme things well, to me, they're extreme. Probably for other people, they're not extreme enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we'll start there. But I mean, that's just the background. That's not so relevant. The main
Yeah,
thing
no,
is I want
I'll
to
go anywhere. Yeah,
hone in on, what do you think the source is? There a source of this? And I've been very fortunate to not really have a lot of physical pain whatsoever. I mean, it's kind of a rarity. Even
yeah,
a headache I get maybe once or twice a year. So my ability to relate, you have to be patient with me there too.
yeah,
Now, maybe psychic and the mental pain more I can relate to, and the meditation side and kind of the more psychological side I can address more. But the physicality, I love hearing about all the wonders and amazements of this body, and that I don't get educated enough in, and I like to learn. So you seem very knowledgeable about that. But I want to just jump in right here about the source of pain,
yeah,
if you've got to that. And I also want to hear more about this autoimmune thing, because there
yeah.
seems to be a lot of mysterious things going on. And I agree, that label does get thrown around a lot. But what would be your alternative for how to view all these different weird things going on with people that just commonly written off as autoimmune?
Sure. So first off, you have to understand what an actual autoimmune diagnosis is. And so it's basically when you find a T cell in healthy tissue, right? So you have to do a biopsy to truly give someone that diagnosis. So the exhibit of that can actually be from a bunch of other different things. And, the first podcast that I listened to, that started leading me down this journey was Dr. Mercola. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Mercola, and he was
On the
interviewing.
newsletter, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. He was the first quack on Facebook that all the pharmaceutical companies wanted to destroy. But he is a shining light in this world of like biohackers, right? And he had this guy Zach Bush, who's a doctor, who was a traditional doctor, and then moved over to the natural world, very spiritual guy. And they were talking about hydration, because I had thought maybe I'm acidic. I was drinking a lot of bottled water and doing supplements and stuff, and it was all the purified stuff, right? And not knowing this back then, that partly was contributing to what I was feeling. But when you drink purified water, it's actually bad for you, right? It's cheap. Not only is it cheap plastic water bottles, you're leaching a lot of plastics in, but there's no mineral content. And because of that, it will leach minerals from your body. And then the minerals that you have in your body are starting to deplete right away. So that's, just one of the things that can be happening to people in chronic pain. But what they were talking about was hydration at the cellular level, right? And so I'm a guy who got a C in college biology. Like I was a true football player in college. But I went to 5 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 3 high schools. So although I tested really high on the very, younger standardized tests and stuff like that, like top 2%, not to brag, but I had no foundation and really no interest in the subjects they were teaching in college for the most part. And so I would, in my college biology course during exam day in the big auditorium, I wouldn't sit in the back because that's where all the cheaters are going to sit. And that's where the professor would go. I would sit front row next to the smartest guys and just use this great vision that God gifted me with to be a great running back and be able to see things and just, and I got to see, luckily squeaked out of there. But so I hadn't really no foundation for health, but my thought was, well, if I know cells make up everything, right? So if I make healthy cells, then maybe I can make a healthy body. And that was the first part of it. And while that's partly true, like if you start without pain, right? If you just focus on that as a child and live your life that way, that's 100% true. But once you get these conditions, now you have to really look at some of the other things. And they're the things that I call the offenders. These are the only things that are causing pain. Inflammation, and we'll talk about what inflammation is. If you have a bleeding response in inflammation, it will leave behind a fibrin, which is a tough fibrous protein. It's from the clot, right? And that's part of your inflammation cycle. So that fibrin is the clot. And that is considered in modern medicine, which plays this shell game with our health, a tough, insoluble protein. Well, shoot, it's insoluble. I can't do anything about it. That's there forever. Let's just manage the symptoms. Well, it's not insoluble. Your body has a natural way to break it down, but it's only through fasting, right? That's the only way your body will stop using those enzymes that are required to cleave that chemical bond. Then the body's other natural resources can start kind of picking away at it, right? It's not going to just all fall apart and leave your system because the body knows that's not healthy for you. It's just got to slowly start bringing these things out of your system through the lymphatic, the interstitium and the lymphatic system. So there's that. Then there's your poor collagen synthesis, right? Most people don't know how to build collagen correctly. There's 4 amino acids and 4 cofactors. The amino acids are the bricks. The cofactors are the construction workers. So once that collagen strand comes out of the cell, it has to twist into a triple helix and align with your muscles. If it does not have vitamin C at that moment, it will come out all messed up, right? And then those bonds that hold it together are 7 times stronger than steel. It's like super glue, right? So if you aren't stretching it out right away and elongating that and keeping it pliable through the nutrition, then it's just going to become like you're super gluing your body together, right? So inflammation with the fibrin, poor collagen synthesis, oxidative stress, which is like biological rust, right? So oxidative stress can be triggered by the inflammation, but mostly by foods. And the foods are causing the inflammation for the most part as well. And I heard you talk about the jab before. That actually has been known to cause a cytokine leak at the cell wall. Cytokine starts the inflammation process, right? And inflammation is not your body attacking itself. It's your body healing itself, right? It's just, you got to let it complete and stop dumping in this inflammatory, whatever it is that's causing it. Then there's calcification, right? So that's you have these calcium ions in your soft tissue. If you don't have magnesium and vitamin K in your mineral regimen, then you can't push the calcium out, and then the vitamin K directs it to the bone, right? So now your tissues become calcified. Then there's these things called oxalates. Have you ever heard of these?
The name does ring a bell, but I couldn't tell you
Yeah,
what
so
they
it's
are. Yeah.
interesting. This is another Dr. Mercola podcast where I almost didn't listen to it. And it was, once again, God's told me, no, you need to listen to this one. And then I quickly realized, like, oh, geez, I've got these oxalates in my body. Because when I was first having these autoimmune conditions, my lymphatic system wasn't draining. And I mean, you could see, I've got probably photos here, but my face was like a pumpkin, right? I'm still strong underneath. I've got these muscles that are just painful. I mean, I'm still strong, but I can't move, and I'm getting super puffy. And I got up to 265 pounds. I played in the NFL at like 215, 218. I'm like 200 right now, a little light. But and so I went to Netflix for my health information, right? Which is something you should never, ever do. And there was a couple documentaries on juicing. And I was like, okay, well, they're saying these are superfoods. I don't know what a superfood is, but it sounds good. So I'm going to juice these superfoods. And so spinach, kale, not kale, really, spinach, beets. So if you ever do beetroot powder, you should stop immediately. And Swiss chard are loaded with these little nanoparticle plant defense chemicals called oxalic acid. So you consume it, and if it's not bound to calcium in your gut, it will leak out through your gut and start building like calcification, but it's a different mineral structure, deposits all throughout your soft tissue. Women have to get hysterectomies because of them. They can get in your eyes, your brain, into your cell, and it turns your cell into a bone producing cell, right? So it just, and there's all sorts of other things these things do, but it's the same thing as a kidney stone. If it doesn't leak out through your gut, it goes into your kidney. Hopefully you have the right pH to dissolve it in your kidney, and you never even notice it's there. So anyway, there's one photo on my social media. You see a big rock. When you do these cleanses, they're very simple. It's just high dose lemonade, like you get purified lemon juice and 30% and the rest water, and throw some calcium citrate in it. And then it dissolves them inside the body. The calcium citrate starts pulling them out through your pores. So I had one that came out through my chest that it took 2 weeks for it to pass. It was like a pumice stone. I mean, it was not small. And if you saw it on my social media, you're like, holy cow. Every time my son would hug me, or I have chihuahuas, they would come on and put, it's like a razor blade, like inside my skin. So anyway, oxalates. And then there's this thing called glycation. So this
Before we
is,
get into that, can I just
yeah, go
ask
ahead.
real quick? Do those have a name? These little protuberances?
Oxalates.
So that's the things that come out of the body through the skin.
Yeah, it's an oxalate. Yeah, I mean,
Oxalate.
it's
And
oxalate.
I
Yeah,
just
so
wanted to
it's,
say I'm a rock nerd, and one of the ways to clean, they recommend to clean quartz crystals is through that acid you talked about. I'm pretty sure that's the same name. It's a plant-based acid. Of course, it doesn't come from the body,
yeah.
but
So like for humans, like consuming citric and malic acid and tartaric acid, right, are all ways to soften or chip away at those little mineral deposits, and so they start, yeah.
But how do you pronounce that? It starts with oxalic acid, right?
Oxalic,
Oxalic.
Oxalic. If I said that
I'm
right.
pretty sure I need to look this up, but I think that's the one you can buy to clean quartz crystals with to make them look shiny and
Oh,
stuff.
oxalic. Yeah, it's a cleaning agent. Yeah. No, it's used in commercial cleaning. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, pretty
So,
wild.
yeah.
To
So
think
now
that our body
you're,
does that with those types of vegetables. Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
yeah. And
Maybe we'll start. Well, go ahead.
when you eat those vegetables, it's benign, right? Because you're not breaking down the plant leaf and then turning it into a liquid, right? So I think spinach. I have an old video I did on TikTok where I was like, spinach is the worst thing ever, and this is when my brain was on fire and I thought I was healing, but I was so far from where I was, but I was better than I was before, and so it's got like 500,000 views, and I was like, God, I should bring that down, but it's my most viewed video. But it's really, juicing is where you can potentially kill yourself and go into like kidney failure. So yeah. And then so the other one is glycation, and this is really the discovery of this is where I was like, okay, this is a path I've been set on. When I was a child, so I had a lot of childhood trauma. I had two stepfathers who were very abusive alcoholics. One of them I don't really give a pass on, but the other one, he was in the Marines for 20 years. He lost his brother in Vietnam. Both of his sons were severely, we said back then retarded, with mentally retarded. They said, that's how they called themselves. And I'm not a big PC guy, but that was the medical diagnosis back then. And so because their mother was an alcoholic, and, so I think he had a lot of his own demons, right? And he grew up in the hills of North Carolina. So, I don't think he had a lot of spirituality practices. But so I thought, God, this happening to me, all of this abuse, physical, nothing else other than just physical abuse and kind of mental abuse, obviously. I was like, there can't be a God, right? There's no way that I deserve this. I'm just a, 9-year-old kid who's getting beat with a, big piece of, almost 2x4, on a almost weekly basis, or a belt or a spoon or something like that. And I said, to cement my beliefs, I was like, don't eat swine, for it's unclean. How arbitrary. And don't mix linen and wool. How arbitrary. So it turns out the only two reasons I denied his existence was because of those two things that turns out to have massive implications in chronic pain. I don't mean just a little bit of it, but both of those things. So when you eat swine, so your body has this event that can happen. So, inflammation is the event, and it leaves behind some stuff, right? These are what I call the offenders, the stuff that's left behind. So when you eat certain foods, it leaves what's called an advanced glycation end product, AGE. The process is called glycation, and the advanced glycation end product is what's left behind. So your body can theoretically, if you're healthy, get rid of about 15,000 AGEs per day. One strip of bacon deposits 30,000 AGEs per day, right? So we've got all these foods, especially using air fryers and like certain oils and whatnot, cause this glycation. Now that glycation is going to leave behind a film. It's the same kind of film that you see when you are barbecuing chicken and you have that sugary barbecue sauce on the top, and that's happening inside your body. Now that is going to cause problem and bind to your collagen, making it inflexible, right? Every single muscle fiber is wrapped in collagen, right? Your muscles remain flexible. It's the collagen mesium, called epimesium, paramesium, whatever, that's outside of the muscle fiber that becomes constricted and you can't stretch, and gluey, and they glue to one another. So they cause it to stick on that collagen, making it even worse. It also promotes more oxidative stress, and then it's promoting more inflammation. So now it's just becoming this soup inside your body that's perpetuating itself. Even if you've decided to just stop eating bacon, it's too bad. You've got these things inside your body that you need to undo, or, help the body get rid of. So that's called glycation. And then, we also have to consider your diet, right? A poor diet, like if you're not building things right, or you don't have the basis for what you need. And diets are dumb, like all these vegetarian or carnivore or omnivore. There are 91 things that your body needs: minerals, nutrients, essential amino acids, and essential fats. If you have those, and then the water is the 91, right? So if you have those 90, it creates everything else the body needs, right? And so that's what people should be looking at for diet. And then your macros, right? So those are kind of considered micros. And then obviously you need protein and, the full stuff to keep you driving, energy into muscles and building healthy muscle tissue. So if you look, so those are what I call the offenders. Those are the only things causing chronic pain. Now, where they come from is going to be up to that person to figure out. But I detail that, like the most obvious things that are causing those events in the UNDU method. And so the reason why you're experiencing pain, and the reason why fibromyalgia is considered a nervous system processing disorder, is to throw it back on you and your body, and that you're not made perfectly. No, it's an alert system. In your central nervous system, you have these pain receptors. They're called nociceptors. It's the only way you experience pain is if you're aggravating a nociceptor, right? It's sending a valid signal to the brain, right? And then over time, I've got this thing where I was talking to my son the other day, because I was pretty bad to my oldest son for at the beginning of this whole problem I was having, just like not patient and yelling at him and stuff. And he's a little kid, and I was just, God, why am I doing this? Like, what's going on? But it changes the biochemistry of the brain. Right. When you're in constant pain, it changes the frontal lobe, and you're constantly in a state of fight or flight. And when you're experiencing pain anyway, you're put into a state of fight or flight. So hard to be gracious in that mode, right? So I was looking at some of your resources, like, these things are, a lot of these things, I mean, they're all great, right? Everyone's trying, everybody's, looking to help people. And I think that's amazing. But no matter how much meditation or grounding I'm doing, I am not shutting that signal off, right? It's still there. I'm just managing it, sort of like a pharmaceutical is just managing a symptom. I'm not getting to the root cause yet. So what I then found out is like, well, how are these things held together in the body? Like what's their structure and how would you break them down? So it turns out everything is held together by a chemical bond that can be, if you're using the right supplement or food or water, it donates an electron to that chemical bond, making that insoluble protein very soluble, right? And the body will have a much easier path to break it down. Or electrostatic interaction, right? You're into rocks, right? Electrostatic interaction is kind of like a magnet, right? So it's held together by this magnetic force. So you need to find out, well, what's the catalyst to that? And how can I get that to release? Right. And there's supplements. And once again, this is 100% rooted in decades of published research. Like I've found nothing new. I just was able to put it all together for people to really say, oh gosh, that makes way more sense than what my doctors are or are not telling me. So once you start breaking those things down or helping the body break those things down with your diet or with supplementation, and you really do need supplementation because you're not going to be able to eat enough food to make these things progressively sort of unwind. So yeah, so how do they, and then what happens is the body cleaves them, or the supplement helps the body cleave them. I got to be careful with my language. And then they start leaving. And so it wasn't even until about a month or two ago that I was like, I'm still in some stiffness, right? I would not be considered somebody that has fibromyalgia. If a doctor was really ambitious, he could say I have a little arthritis in my shoulder, but like every day it's getting looser and looser and it's going apart. But I'm going through this process, and then I'd feel really bad and depressed and anxious. And it turns out, like when you're, it's a big piece I missed, and I'm glad I figured it out. Is when you break these things down, well, what's happening is you're now releasing them back into the bloodstream, which is going to cause another cytokine sort of storm. And so you got to make sure you're really hydrating yourself so the body can get these things out. And so, the supplement itself or the strategy itself isn't with some side effects, but very quickly that something's happening. Like these things enter the bloodstream, like the supplements that you may take on your own or my flexibility fuel, and it immediately starts calming down the cytokine response within 15 to 20 minutes, based on the biochemistry. It's immediately looking for these misfolded protein aggregates, the fibrin, the collagen, and starts cleaving them. So within a couple of days, you're just like, oh, what just let go there, right? Doesn't remove it. It just breaks it up enough to where you feel it and the body can start getting rid of it. So that's like the whole concept behind my theory and the program that I created and why I created the supplement itself.
Well, awesome. I've got a few things came up here around that. And I'm glad that you could find all this out. And then it's not just a theory; you've proved it. It's works on you, and I'm sure you have plenty of other people
Oh,
that are
sure.
saying the same thing. The
Yeah.
one thing I'm curious about is, would you think there's a point where then does it need ongoing maintenance, or is it kind of done at one point and then because I thought about food, from what I understand that some people have all kinds of different ideas about supplements, why you should take them, why you shouldn't. I mean, now I'm talking about chronic pain or just just kind of whatever a baseline normal or whatever that is,
Sure. Yeah.
which that doesn't exist either. But unfortunately, I don't know if we can get if food is good enough, whole
Yeah.
food, clean, pure, organic. Is it nutrient dense enough in this day and age to ideally that would be
It's not.
great.
Yeah.
It would be
So,
great to be able to do that. So
yeah. So,
those are two things. And then I don't want to throw too much on your plate,
no,
but
no, let
I
me,
do.
I know to take notes
No,
now. Yeah. Yeah.
let's just okay. Just one more.
Well,
I do want to talk about this fight or flight response and
yeah.
like because and how actually you have to tell me educate me about because I see sports and like really sprinting and running and really what I would consider extreme, but it's probably just regular sports. That
Yeah.
the body it seems to be simulating a fight or flight response. I know when I
It
run
is.
and things like that, my
Yeah.
body feels like I'm escaping from an enemy or something. But
Well,
but my mind isn't developed enough to deal with that. You know what I mean? So I haven't trained the mind to work with that, and so I'm undeveloped in how to perceive that and deal with that psychologically. You know what I mean? So I just wanted you
yes.
to address that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me start with the first thing.
Sure.
Leaving the body, how long will it take? It literally all depends on the person and how much of this junk of these offenders are in the body. It is not, for me, it's been, I mean, my son's 8 now, 8 and a half, right? And I started right before he was born. I had no direction though, but things were, oh, what was this? Why did that happen? And the quickness of it is that it's working. The thing is depending on how much junk is in your body, the body takes its time in removing it. It cannot overwhelm itself, right? To create more, disease or blockage or whatever it might be. So it's just these little macrophages and mechanoreceptors just come and kind of start picking away at it. And it just, leaves the body. So it all depends on the person and how intentional they are about it. And also once it's gone, no, you have to make sure you avoid the foods or as you're going through it, because, I would still do certain things or eat certain foods that weren't serving me, like ice cream, and so I had a big addiction. So, but then I really finally realized like I'm just slowing this process down, right? It's just like, and so now it's like I'm a very I'd say maybe at this point, 5 to 10% of what I'm doing is like manufactured foods. The rest is my meats, liver. I eat heart. I do some vegetables only for folate. Folate I think is one of the most important nutrients you can have. And the problem with a lot of vitamins and the manufactured foods is it has this thing called folic acid in it. Folic acid does not act like folate. It's very unuseful, especially for 50% of the world, which is us, which have the MTHFR polymorphism, which is basically takes folate and creates this enzyme that slows down the mast cell response, right? So mast cell activation syndrome is the syndromes are just like, oh, we don't know where it's coming from. It's more than likely because you're eating too many manufactured foods and not enough whole foods. And with that folic acid, at the upper limit, it acts like a neurotoxin. It's not considered a neurotoxin, but it acts like one. If you're a child and you go to school with a Flintstones chewable vitamin, you're already a third of the way to the upper limit. Then you have a bowl of cereal. You're probably almost halfway there. Then you go to school and eat whatever you eat. And then you're now diagnosed with AD and you're sitting under LED lights that are flickering constantly in the brain, but not the eyes, causing an anxious moment. And so these health foods that are labeled health foods, but they're laden in folic acid and seed oils are causing inflammation. And then that folic acid sits on the folate receptor and blocks folate from actually being able to do its job to create that enzyme, right? So now you say, well, I'm going to eat this nonsense food, but I'm also going to eat spinach. It's too bad. You already blocked that folate from the receptor. And so you also need folate in your diet to stop cancer cells from dividing, right? So it's super, super important to make sure if you're taking and we'll talk about the nutrition, when you're taking a multivitamin that it's got methylfolate in it, it's already methylated, which is that methylation cycle in your body, right? So now it can create that enzyme, right? And slow down those mast cells from giving off histamine, which is putting everyone in anxiety. And then anxiety and depression are cousins, right? Maybe non-identical twins, they're always going to happen together, whether it's a lower response or a higher response, but the way the metabolic pathways work, they're related, right? So now when you look at food and yeah, you have to take supplements, right? And there's no possible way. And on my in my program, it's like a community page where there's this one resource called the world's greatest shopping list. So I've taken the essential nutrients, the essential amino acids, the essential fats, and the essential minerals. And I've broken them down by food type: animal, vegetable, fruit, nut, legume, and the most bioavailable sources, meaning can my body actually utilize this, right? And then if you're eating plants are loaded with anti-nutrients. They're holding on to those minerals. And so you're not actually able to get them out of the plant. But your gut has to be perfect in order to make the conversion. And who's got perfect gut health now? So if you're not eating your meats, your red meats, which have been vilified with this fake cholesterol epidemic that's happening, because cholesterol, once again, is regulated by enzymes based on the need of the body. And the American Heart Association has already said high cholesterol or food does not create high serum cholesterol, right? Your body releases it as its need. So I could eat a million eggs, and if I don't need that cholesterol, my body won't release it into the bloodstream. Right. So, I think it's like 90% of your brain weight is cholesterol. All your sex organs depend upon cholesterol. And you don't, and the cholesterol is where you get your vitamin D from. right? The sun is releasing it from the cholesterol, and then vitamin D is involved in 80% of your metabolic processes. But when you look at this chart, you're going to realize there's no way we're close. And I know the chart, right? I'm not close. I take a methylated multivitamin. I take a mineral supplement. I'll take a omega-3 supplement, right? And that's where we'll talk about autoimmune is the omega-3, omega-6 ratio. But yeah, but then high level athletes, all like there's one thing that they have that's very common amongst them is that MTHFR gene. So MTHFR is the body's way to convert that folate into that enzyme. So if you've got a slow gene, then it's a slower process. So now, just naturally as a human, my fuse is halfway lit all the time anyway, because I've got that inability to create that enzyme. So now that's a common genetic trait in Olympians and world-class athletes is that MTHFR gene. So it's like you need to go out, you need to run around. You've got this sort of fire in you to do that. And so me, who is someone who has stayed active his whole life, being inside this prison, this body prison, I'm not able to generate the endorphins, right? And if I go try to work out for the next 2 weeks, I'm having trouble just functioning, getting out of bed. And if it wasn't for this business that I started, this energy business, I would not have been able to hold the job. It's a residual like revenue stream. My brother's my partner. He almost tried to fire me once. I was like, bro, it's like, I'm dealing with something here. Like, so, but it's, yeah, so I was very fortunate in that. But yeah, that's the question. No, food alone can't do it, and like just on a normal diet. But if you're in pain, there's no way. It'll take you 1,000 years.
Yeah, that's it's wild. You have to send links so I can get these charts and stuff because when it comes to this kind of high level information that I don't really have reference points for, then I get visual, right? And so
Yeah,
that would be helpful to kind of see this side by side, that chart that you said too.
yeah.
So we can get back to the science too because I find it really fascinating. It's stuff I think we're still figuring out. Doctors don't talk a lot about, as far as I know. I've been had the good fortune that I don't have to go with a lot of the mainstream medical community. I
I
mean, of
won't go
course, if I get in
anymore.
an
Yeah,
accident, or I need a surgery, that's maybe. But
yeah,
but
yeah. So let me
but
just
yeah,
quickly tell you how these
sure.
doctors are handcuffed, because I know that
Mm.
my own personal, family physician, he's younger guy, super nice. I know he got into it for the right reasons. But then when you look at how they're trained and what they're allowed to do, they are not allowed to do anything unless there's a symptom present and there's a drug for it or a surgery for it, right? And then if you look at how these studies are done for medications and for what they're allowed to prescribe, every study has to be a single silver bullet approach. So, for example, I was real. So, someone in my family has what do you call it? Cold source, gets cold source. And so I was like, there's got to be a way, right? And so, nope, there's no way to do it. It's locked into a cell that can't be penetrated, or that the disease state lives in, and then the lysine, which is a natural food item or supplement, can then kill that thing. But you have to penetrate the cell wall. Well, coconut does that, right? The monolaurin in the coconut permeates the cell wall, so that where medication can't fit. And then so it can then, with the lysine, can have the ability to kill that virus. And then if you're fasting, right, and you're getting through that apoptosis and autophagy where it's going to try to self-clean the cell and use its components to, well, if it can't clean up the cell, it's going to tell the cell to die. It'll reuse the usable components and get rid of the rest of the junk. That only happens at I think it's like 72 hours of fasting, right? So you need to get to that mark. And then the part so in inflammation, that cycle, the last part, your body releases enzymes from the liver that, similar to the enzymes I have in my supplement, that then scour to cleave that thing, right? If you don't get to that at least 20-hour mark, 16 to 20-hour mark, they're going to stay in your liver and they're just waiting to be fed. So once you put food in your mouth, those enzymes are going to go digest food, right? And so they're only doing one or the other. You must be in a starved state for them to start getting back into your bloodstream to look for some of the offenders to help cleave them and break them down.
Wow, and this is not to mention the insurance industry too, which and the academia that the studies and medications are based on. That's a whole nother area that should probably be addressed. And the
Yeah, they're
insurance
they're not
companies, the way it
allowed to
goes,
use multiple approaches. It's like, does this one thing work? No, you're building a house. You're not just using wood. You know what I mean? It's like the house is going to fall down. And so doctors are handcuffed, and medicine has been handcuffed, and it's unfortunate.
Not to mention the studies of all the different. Usually, when one medication, as far as I remember, they test it in isolation, but in the
Yeah,
real world, hardly anybody is just on one pharmaceutical. So all the
right.
different things that could potentially affect. There's so many different choice
I,
points and factors that factor into studying
Yeah,
these things. It's
I've seen people who I've asked them for their medication list, and and now that, I have a love-hate relationship with AI, it's helped me get down this rabbit hole so much further, so much quicker. So I threw, my brother's got, on some medications, and it's fatal, right? But the doctors, I'm just like, dude, you can't do this anymore. But, unfortunately, his partner is someone who believes in medicine and believes that he should be on medicine, and this is what the doctors say, and we got to trust our doctors, and it's you can't. It's unfortunately.
it's a tough one. I mean, because that's dangerous territory, even saying that, right? Because some people would say, in certain conditions, you're not supposed to make any changes on yourself by yourself. You're supposed to get approval from your doctor before you do it.
Yeah,
And so it's just, it's a really, it's a rock and a hard place.
yeah.
So
I think, but if people arm themselves with this one phrase, what's the mechanism of action, right? What is this drug doing in my body? Right. And you find out it's not doing anything to the actual disease. It's just causing the symptoms to be muted. Right. And then the side effects that go along with it. So if you really look at what's the mechanism of action in the biochemistry in the body, should I take this to help with this? And it'll give you a good answer, because it's going to go to the studies.
it's really good. I mean, yeah, that's a great approach. And then we have some people that just don't want to do their own research. It takes a lot of time, energy, effort, and interest. That's
I,
the
I
big thing you
couldn't I
mentioned.
couldn't read a
Yes.
soup label before. I was
See, so it's
so much
possible. Yes.
neuroinflammation. It's like it's an impossibility. So yeah.
So before we get back into some more of the hard science here, I want to, you mentioned a few things about fluorescent lighting. So
Hmm.
I would just kind of you know, you can go into the reasons why, but if you just want to give, because you've already kind of expressed so much knowledge and things. So just talk about your everyday life, what you have beyond the body too. Like, what do you have any suggestions for replacing lights with, water is a huge one you haven't
Yeah.
touched on. So
Water
that's
was
it.
the first
And
thing I changed. Yeah.
is there anything with the air? Because that's even more important than water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're breathing that constantly, and I don't know about what to do about that.
So let me just
And
write
just
these down: light, water, air. That's
air
yeah.
and just kind of basic habits, maybe mindsets too, or
Yeah.
different basic products that we might use every day that you find. Just basically anything for daily living that you would
Yeah.
suggest as far as health and well-being.
So it's interesting. Once again, lights. I've sold a number of LED lights in my energy business before I knew what they were actually doing. And so what's happening, and you can see this, a lot of people on social media will videotape their LED lights, and your eyes don't pick up on it, but your brain's constantly picking up on it. So I decided, so I have LED lights in most of my house, right? But I changed everything in my living room. And so when I went into the living room and turned these lights on, you feel it immediately. You were just like, when you turn a light on in my kitchen, it's that harsh LED blue light that is damaging your retina. It's like, I don't want to be there. I want to get out of this room, go sit on the couch and turn my fluorescent bulbs on. And it's a full spectrum of light. And you need the full spectrum of light for healing, right? Everything is energy. There are photons. Part of how you break some of these offenders down is through photon energy, right? And so that's why the sun is so beneficial in that near infrared range. So, so I sleep under a near range infrared light almost every night. It probably keeps me up a little more than I wanted to, but you just feel it happening. You feel the healing going on if you're really listening.
Is
I
that
don't.
fluorescent, near range infrared? What type of light is it? Because I can't find incandescent. My eyes are, I'm fairly sensitive, and I had to turn on this light for the lighting of this, and my
Yeah,
eyes burn because of it
that's a
too,
good question.
Yeah.
I know that they do have a fluorescent type. You can get it for $10 at like Home Depot, right? And
Okay.
just get one of those kind of spotlight versions.
Yeah.
I buy them off of Alibaba, right,
Mm.
directly from the factories, and I get them for like a third of the price that you'll find on.
But are they halogen? Are they fluorescent? Or what's the type
I
of they?
think that they might be LED, to be honest with
LED,
you.
actually.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
because there are a
Yeah.
lot of little. Yeah, it's got to
Okay.
be LED,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is probably part of the reason why I don't sleep now that you like. I don't really
It,
dig too much into my lights yet,
sure. Yeah.
because I've got
Yeah.
so much other stuff I'm doing.
Oh,
But
totally. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I changed my diet. I'm trying to get rid of as much manufactured foods. But I bought some M&Ms yesterday. I was at my kids' hockey game, and I bought some M&Ms, and I would have housed that thing in 5 minutes before. And now I'll have a few. I'm like, oh God, and at the 2/3 of it's sitting up in my room right now. Probably never eat them. So getting the sugars out. Sugars what causes that offender glycation. Water was the first thing that I changed. I went from drinking a lot of purified water. I went and got a whole house system, and then everything, not everything, but mostly what I drink is I try to get a glass bottle with the spring water. You need the mineral content, and once again, this is another thing that I have on the program that people can learn. It breaks down the waters. So, purified water is garbage. It's gonna make you sicker. Distilled water is really good for cleanses because it's pools and leaches. But if you put that into a plastic water bottle, it's gonna pool a lot of plastic back in the water bottle. So you got to use a glass jar for that. You want to stay away from microwaves and air fryers. Air fryers causes tons of glycation. Microwaves messes up the cellular construct of your food. Gosh, what else do I created my own meditation practice called 33 breaths. It's like the entryway into learning meditation, where hopefully you're out grounding, on the earth with your feet, and, near water or whatever, but you're just going to do 11, and those first 11 are for yourself. And somebody that's got a lot of anxiety, just getting through those first three is tough right? But you get through to those 11 because you're doing it for yourself. Like, you deserve this. And you're tracking them with your fingers. And on the 11th one, you're doing prayer hands up to the sky. And then the next are for you to say your gratitudes, and it's not only for really what you think you're thankful for. Like, thank you for giving me this pain. Like, it humbled me greatly. I'm Dan Esposito kind of guy. I'm the best, you know, whatever, I'm one of the top 1% of athletes in the world. And, I had this bigger, not completely, but it was there in the background in certain situations. Right. And so it really, humbled me. So, and then the last 11 or for trying to connect your pineal gland, like looking inward and attaching it to the ether, right? All this is energy up here, right? The higher you go, the higher the electrical impulse. And that's been tested and studied, and it's right. It's there. Lightning, right? I just tell you, lightning exists. So that's obviously coming through an electrical current. But yeah, so I do my meditations, 33 breaths. I'm in the sauna quite a bit, but then you got to make sure you're replenishing yourself with your minerals and your nutrients when you're doing that. What else do I have in there? Oxygen therapy is amazing. Like when you get in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, but if you do a glutathione drip, which is your master antioxidant prior to, you the body releases so much junk, right? You become, and it's a shame because you feel amazing for 2 to 3 days, and then you have a little bit of a setback, but not all the way, right? It's like, I wish I could feel this way forever. What are some other practices that we have there?
While you're
Yeah,
thinking, what kind of water filtration system do you use for the house?
Asana. It's just a brand that I
Mm-hmm.
bought, right? And I still don't want to drink out of the tap, even though I have it.
I mean, what type of, is it reverse
Oh, reverse
osmosis? Is it
osmosis.
okay?
Yeah, yeah. And
Because
I
I've
bought
heard.
this way before I understood any of this stuff. I bought it
Mm,
because my second kid was around. I was like, well, I don't want him sitting in this water. I'm going to get this system when he for his bath. So yeah, and then I started learning more about water.
And I've heard time and time again, and it makes sense to me that pain can be a great teacher, and it seems like it's taught you, the humility, which is,
Yeah.
I've heard these stories too with people with injuries being laid up in a hospital where they're so super active, and then they're forced to go inside and deal with things they've just been trying to avoid and run away from, you know what I mean, or try to put off too, but that's just the start of kind of the things. And I don't wish that on anybody, obviously,
No. I would see
because
people jogging, like people who I know are nowhere near the athlete that I am, but they're out there jogging. I'm like, that, gosh dang it, like I can't even take steps without pain. I can't even stop without pain. Like it causes a muscle tension, and all those little offenders then aggravate the nociceptors, and you're like, ugh. It's why people slip and fall. It's because once they, try to make a movement, there's that pain signal. It tells you to stop, and then you lose balance, and you fall over. But yeah.
and that's the other thing about numbing out, right? And if people are in pain, it's understandable they want some immediate relief, but then there's a potential they can damage themselves further because they can't really have any feedback, right? For
Yeah.
feeling when they can actually hurt themselves further if they want to keep
Yeah, and the problem
pushing
is
again.
you just don't know what's under the skin, most people.
Yeah.
When I went to get I've had 13 sort of orthopedic surgeries, and then I count the 2 broken jaws in there as well, which I've come to realize, like, all but 2 of them were unnecessary, not counting the 2 broken jaws. So all but 4 of them were unnecessary. It was really soft tissue and fascia problems. And so when I went to Rothman Institute, who is the leader in joint replacement therapy in the United States, because they do so many of them, not because they're good at what they do, they just do a lot of them. And I asked my surgeon after the last orthopedic surgery, and he's like, you got it. When you turn 50, you're going to have to get these shoulders done and then your knees done eventually. And I was like, well, what's going on in there? He goes, your muscles are just tangled. And I'm like, it's not even real, and that's a surgeon at one of the best, surgical hospitals in the world, apparently. And so there's just not enough information to understand what's underneath the hood. And once you uncover that, you're like, okay, well, at least there's a starting point for me, right? I start breaking these things down, and then you start realizing, and you can ask AI, there's nothing else, right? There's other conditions there's things that cause this to happen, but this is the stuff that's actually causing the pain. So
The one thing I think you mentioned really quick, and you explained the pork very well. I appreciate that. But I hadn't heard this. I knew a little bit about the Bible, but you said mixing cotton and linen.
yes,
So I
yeah.
want to, yeah. What's that about? Because I haven't heard that before.
Linen and wool, right? So it's
Linen
linen and
wool.
wool.
Okay,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
cotton. Okay, great.
I might have said cotton, I'm not sure. But so everything's has a vibration, right? Everything, has some sort of energetical vibe. And so your body has one, and it's about 65 to maybe 100 megahertz, right? That's your vibration. The lower your vibration, the sicker you are, the higher your vibration, the healthier you are. And that's based in science. And so when you wear linen, it's resonating at a much higher frequency than you. And so that's why they would have linen sheets in the hospitals. So what's happening? It's constantly donating electrons back to your body, stabilizing a free radical. That free radical causes oxidative stress. So you've slowed down the oxidation in your body, right? Wool, 5,000 plus, same deal. But when you mix those two, it's a dead frequency. And there's a lady named Dr. Heidi Yellen, once again, very spiritual. You got her doctorate, who did this study, and it's out there, and it's very interesting. And I've talked to her. She's a Facebook friend of mine. And so you're now creating a dead fabric against your skin, and it's slowly like a water drip, constantly pulling out an electron, leaving that unpaired electron, which is a free radical, as well as causes a glycation event on every single electron transference. So when you wear a polyester clothing, it's 15. So way lower than your body. It's almost like a dead human, like a dead body. So now you're sleeping on these beds that are made of these styro, whatever the heck they're called, memory foam, or wearing polyester clothes. And, you take it off and it sticks to you. That's energy, right? That's static electricity. And that's because it's now just pulling a bunch of stuff out of your body. So yeah, that's another one of my practices. This is bamboo. I think I've got my cotton. I did linen for a long time. I've got some wool stuff, and I wear a wool cap. My hair health has gotten better because it's oxidative stress and poor collagen in your head and your scalp can cause premature hair loss. And when I was really sick, like my hair was falling out, and I've got like pretty decent hair for a 54-year-old right now. It's not all there. It's mostly there, but it was quickly leaving my head back in the day.
Huh. So
Yeah.
it has to be really close to each other, though? I mean,
It's
you
got to be
could you
touching.
it's gotta be touching. So you could
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
safely wear a wool hat and linen trousers, right? And be
Oh yeah,
okay with
yeah. As
that.
long
Yeah,
as they're
yeah.
not
Just
touching
as
one another.
long
But
as you don't, like, have a wool vest on a linen shirt or
yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah.
here's the interesting thing. Let's say you're wearing, cotton underwear, right? But your pants are synthetic and you're grounding. It's actually going to cause more damage than if you're just wearing the synthetic alone because of how the energy shifts. So you really have to be intentional about, as you buy your next pair of underwear, your next pair of pants, you got to start phasing these polyester, clothing out. And not only that, they have heavy metals in their paint, in their dyes, right? And so now you're putting it on your skin, you're sweating, you're absorbing heavy metals right into your system. I think we should talk about autoimmune though, and
Let's
why
do
I
that.
think
And
it's
I will
fake.
just say
Yeah.
that this is organic cotton, and I switched to this years ago when I can, because you can still find affordable organic
Yeah.
clothing too. And the linen sheets, organic mattress. Noticed a huge difference when I
Yeah.
switched
I
to
put a
that.
grounding sheet on my
I've
bed.
heard
And
that's
so
really good too. Yeah.
I bought a cheap one
And
because I didn't really understand the science behind it. And I bought one
mhm.
on Amazon for pretty cheap. And then so, went to bed. I was like, I don't know, maybe I don't know if it's working or not. And so it broke a few months later. The cord snapped because it was a cheap one. And then I couldn't sleep for 3 days after that. I was like, okay. So went and got a nice fitted one. And, you get into bed. It's the same thing as being under those lights. You have that just feeling of warmth and sort of silence.
I've also heard of an incline bed therapy. There's a slight incline at the head of the bed, and I forget the science behind why that works. But that's something else I've heard of. And I think my folks, they got one and they noticed a big improvement from just having a bed that's slightly inclined.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it's how a lot of people like to blame their bed for their pain. It's like, no, internally you're just pressing up against these nociceptors, no matter which way you lay, right? Because they'll get trapped in this collagen gluey matrix. And just as you're putting pressure constantly, it eventually is like, okay, I got to turn over now, right? And so but yeah,
Okay.
autoimmune. So let's do
Mhm.
autoimmune because
Sure.
it's like the gaslight of gaslights for so many people in society.
Okay.
So once again, in order to have a true autoimmune diagnosis, there has to be a T cell in healthy living tissue. So it's attacking that part of your body, right? But the reality is most people don't get that. And so if we look at and this is where we go back to, if you make a healthy cell, you make a healthy body, right? And so your membrane of every cell, right? And the cell is where the inflammation signaling cycle starts. The cell feels pressure, high heat, damage, you know, processed food, whatever. It's like, you shouldn't be here. We're going to call the troops in to come get rid of you, right? So now it gives off that inflammatory signaler, which recruits the cytokines and C-reactive proteins. So if you have rheumatoid arthritis, they're going to look for those C-reactive proteins and some other markers to say, okay, you have rheumatoid arthritis. Well, anything with itis is just inflammation. It does not matter what precedes it. It's, it's tendonitis, tonsillitis, arthritis. It's just inflammation in a different part of the body. And there's like 600 different names. So now the cell wall is the signaler, is the fire alarm. You should have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3s, which are not pro-inflammatory, like fish oils, salmon, things like that, and omega-6, which is your pro-inflammatory signaler, right? 1-to-1 ratio is what you should have. If you have a 4-to-1 ratio, you're probably still going to be in pretty good shape. The average American, and I'm not talking about the most sick Americans, the average American is 15-to-1 pro-inflammatory omega-6s to omega-3s. So now that stressor comes against the cell wall. Those cytokines release, those C-reactive protein comes. You're calling the entire fire department instead of just pouring a little water on the problem. So now those processes and those signalers are spilling over into your soft tissue. It becomes an innocent bystander and starts degrading the ligaments and tendons. And so once again, if you're not building healthy collagen, you're not giving yourself the building blocks to rebuild those things. So now you're not building them, and you're not attacking them. Your body is spilling over these chemicals into your joints, and then you're getting something like rheumatoid arthritis. So now a lot of women are suffering from this. And so maybe it's their makeup, maybe it's the cleaning agents, maybe it's the soap, it could be anything. They're using these what does everybody had to put on their hands, antibacterial stuff, right? Which causes an immediate inflammation response, right? And you need bacteria, it lives within us all the time. So yeah, so then what happens is, if there's bleeding, you're going to form a clot, right? And that clot becomes a fibrin, and that stops the bleeding. If there's no bleeding, then in either case, this is the next thing that happens, is that they start recruiting all these other things to go kill the defender, right? I'm going to go eat up the defender. And then the white blood cells give off lymph as its byproduct. Here comes all the garbage. So if you're having lymphatic system issues, it's because you're probably overwhelming your body with too much inflammation, and then the lymph is coming out. But every time you have a clot response or an inflammation response, you have a collagen response to shore up the area. Now, have you built that collagen correctly? Right? Or is it coming out like super glue? All right. And then once all that stops and you're able to get that defender out of the body, if your interstitium, which is the spaces between, which is mostly fluid, is not jammed up and your lymphatic system can handle the load, it takes it out of the body. For me, I wasn't doing that. It was just compounding within me, and I'm getting puffier and puffier and puffier. And then, so let's just say it all goes out. Well, then the next step in the process, the final process, is the enzyme release to go get all those misfolded proteins out of there to clear up the area, right? And that's the healing cycle of inflammation. It's not your body attacking you, it's attacking the thing. You're just now not set up correctly to handle it and process it the right way.
That's a really helpful and in-depth version of that, because there's so much, yeah, here thing that the inflammation's the problem, but it's not that simple, right? And
Right.
because as you say, it's there to help us heal, but it's
Yeah.
not as simple as that. There's all kinds of processes involved. What's healthy, what's not, what's needed for that whole natural process to
Yeah.
unfold correctly, and I think that will give a lot more information and for these processes involved for people struggling around this. And even if not, the healthy inflammation response, how, what we need for that to happen, because that's just a natural process in the body.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many probably modern factors that just
Oh,
that make it more challenging, make it
sure.
way
I
more
mean, we talked
challenging. Yeah.
about air, right?
Yeah.
The air. Well, if I just kind of, we're getting late here, but I
Yeah.
could go on for 3 more hours. Through the NFL alumni, I get free blood work, right? And so, I was already on to the chemtrail thing. I don't care if anyone thinks I'm crazy, because I have to be the person that
It's a
stands up for
huge thing.
this.
Just go outside and look at the sky. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
seriously.
And my grandfather worked for Lockheed Martin. Like, he was an engineering mind. I kind of have an engineering mind, and I know the mechanics of not only how those turbines work, but also how quickly water dissipates, even at high frozen levels. It's within no more than 3 minutes, right? So it's happening. So one day I'm coming downstairs in my backyard, and I'm like, gosh, my tongue tastes metallic. So I'm like, let me go get my blood work done. So both my aluminum and my mercury were really high. I wasn't eating much fish at the time. My deodorant maybe was doing the aluminum, but I'm also in the sauna like 3, 4, 5 days a week sometimes. Like, how could it have been so elevated? So there's 4 cleanses in the UNDU method: the oxalate cleanse, the parasite cleanse, the lymphatic cleanse, and then the heavy metal cleanse, right? If you don't get the heavy metals out of your system, you're going to still be under constant inflammatory processes. But I was losing my mind from these heavy metals. Like, I was having these weird thoughts, like just racing, and then depression. And then when I didn't feel it, that same thought wouldn't spur on a depressive mindset. And I'm like, okay, well, I know it's not just the way I think, right? It's something's causing me to think this way. I couldn't see my computer. I was having a tough time working. I could not see my phone at all. And did the heavy metal cleanse. And within 3 days, all that cleared up.
Amazing. Do you, of course, I'm very interested in parapolitics and stuff. Do you feel comfortable going into any kind of information or what you think about this. It's people call it geoengineering,
Yeah.
stratospheric aerosoling, weather modification. So, like,
Yeah.
what do you have to say about it if you're okay
Yeah.
with saying? Because I've heard so much, and I think the jury's may still be out. And then I think there's many layers and levels potentially that we
Yeah.
don't know about that go beyond the physical with this one too.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
In my Hermeticism and Gnostic approach, and my searching for Jesus and God, the Almighty, not the God of the Old Testament, right? Jesus says that's not you're worshiping the wrong guy. So under the Hermetic philosophies or principles, like that was just a regional God, right? There were administrators of certain lands, and that's Yahweh. And I know some people may not want to hear things like this, but he's the God of weather, right? So that's all who we've been sort of directed to send our energy in the hermetic principles. Is like wherever you're sending your energy to, whoever you're praying to or meditating to, is who's going to have that energy within this demon. In Hermeticism, demons aren't bad. It's like demons, and there's good demons, bad demons, angels, whatever. Angels are a little higher, but you can latch on to a bad demon in these philosophies. But so we're all praying toward this one direction, and I decided to kind of skip all that and just let's connect with the source, right? And so politically, I've never been like a lifelong follower of politics, but I've had sort of let's go this way, let's go this way. And then you realize like they are all bad, none of them are good, they're all controlled. And I was always a Republican. I always voted for Democratic presidents, right? I became a Republican very young because my dad's a businessman and I want to be in business, and whatever. I just thought that, well, it's pro business, and so, but I never voted for a presidential candidate that was a Republican. And then when COVID started and my relationship was faltering back then because of what I was going through, I would try to get sunlight. And because I've got genetically, my vitamin D receptors are slow. And I grew up in Florida. So I come up to Philadelphia and all of a sudden, like, I don't have the sunshine. I'm feeling bad. So I need the sunlight, and I'm just looking up and looking up and looking up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, well, Biden was president then. So I'm like, well, I'm not voting for Democrat this time, because they know it's happening. The EPA has come out and said it's happening. Certain states have banned it now. At the state level, you can't do anything about the government level. So it's like, well, if I vote the other way, which I do not vote anymore, and I wish I could take every single one of my votes back, then maybe that will stop, because that's the only thing I care about, right? I can handle everything else. I can decide what goes into my face. I can decide what I teach my children, but I can't decide what air I breathe. And then when it didn't stop at that point, I was like, okay, now I know that they're all in on it, because they've talked about this 2 years ago and still have not stopped it. So, yeah, I've got some ideas. I don't know if it's a way to like make things so bad as they enter us into this cryptocurrency world where everything's going to be digital. And then, oh, look, we're all a savior now and it's all going to stop. Or, I have no idea, but I know it's definitely making people sick. It's blocking you from source. It's blocking you from sun. And
But the thing
it's
is,
something you should deeply consider.
the, but you don't have any thing to say about the operational layer. So we've got the health layer of us little ants down here, so to speak, basically helpless, seeing that, not knowing what's going on. But then on the higher level, yeah, you address that, and I've heard these things. But as far as the day-to-day operations of how it's being done physically, and who's behind it, do you have anything to say about
Yeah.
that? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm.
there's a guy named Dane Cook. I don't know if you've heard of Dane Cook, which it's funny, my son's name is also Dane, but he's the head
Geoengineering
of
Watch.
Geoengineering
Yes,
Watch.
of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's got this 1997 website, and I think he's controlled opposition, to be honest with you, because it makes him look crazy to not update his website. But he
Very well
talks
could be.
about it in
Yeah.
great detail, and it's so what was the question again
Like
specifically?
how they're actually pulling off the
Oh, the
physical
Navy
part of
is
it.
doing it. Yeah, the
Okay,
Navy's doing it.
and
Yeah.
then what kind of like mind control are they telling them to say, like, surely not everybody. I just can't, how can everybody be so corrupt and mind controlled that nobody will stand up and say, no, this is BS. I'm not doing this. I'm killing people. This is not good for people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's what I can't wrap my head around, the sophisticated
yeah, because you're a
either
good person.
coercion around it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
you're a
You're
good
right.
human. Yeah.
I'm very
So,
naive. I'm very naive. Yes.
yeah,
So.
it's like they recruit these people, they recruit them, they find out who's got no conscience, and they're the ones that are doing it. But there have been Navy whistleblowers who have come out and talked against this kind of stuff. So it's not everybody is just turning a blind eye to it.
The Ted Gunderson, what was he? He was an FBI supposed whistleblower, but he died not too long after he said where one of the programs was of these was
Wow.
going out of. I forgot which port, and I could have that wrong.
Yeah, I
We can
don't
look
know
into
Ted
that,
Gunderson.
but
I know the name, but I'm
I
not
think it's
familiar
Ted
with him.
Ted Gunderson. Yeah, so it's maybe in the 90s or something. But anyway, yeah, thanks for that, because this is a huge thing, because I mean, let's just say I'm not 100% sold, but if it's going on, that's huge. Something's going on that
Yeah.
we can't really have any say whatsoever. It's
Yeah,
potentially
I mean, when
affecting
you find
every
out
single
that the
breath we
bees are
take
dying
every
because of
day.
heavy amounts of aluminum, right? And there's aluminum in the ground and aluminum doesn't exist in its free form. Well, how's it getting there then? How are the bees getting it? There's no aluminum plants that I'm aware of, or flowers. So it's like there's enough stuff out there. If you don't want to stay blind to it, it's easily acceptable that it's happening. And the EPA has come out and said it.
So maybe this
Yeah.
is a part to start maybe winding up. What else did you want to
Yeah.
get into today that we haven't talked about as far as that?
You can be genetically predisposed to have depression and anxiety just because in your methylation, you can't utilize certain like B vitamins, and your B vitamins are super important for brain energy and brain health. And the fats are really important as well. But when you're in constant physical pain, I'm just going to read this because I printed it out yesterday. It's, damaged tissues flood the bloodstream with inflammatory chemical alarms, the cytokines that we talked about. These signals cross into the brain, trapping the nervous system in constant fight or flight survival. The chemical stress disrupts normal brain function, triggering severe anxiety, brain fog, depressive symptoms, and mental exhaustion. So that's just the way it makes you feel. But what structurally happens to the brain is constant chronic pain physically shrinks gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for emotional control, decision making, and patience, which I'm very aware of. Prolonged activation of pain circuits traps the amygdala in hyperdrive, and then individuals frequently develop defensive personality traits, including hypervigilance, deep irritability, chronic anxiety, emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and social withdrawal, as the brain prioritizes basic survival over high level functioning.
And that's the source of that. Go back to the beginning one more time, and what was causing that cascade
Just the
effect there?
chronic pain, those chronic
The
pain
chronic
signals that
pain.
are coming
So
into
that's
plus
very,
the cytokines, like all the stuff
yes,
that you're releasing
cytokine
that's
storm.
in
Yeah.
your bloodstream that's going up there, activating that, you know, deactivating parasympathetic nervous system and creating this anxiety and fight or flight, signal. And that's a shame because, you know, I've always been a very patient person. Like someone could like six people could want to fight me, and I'm just like, whatever, like what, what. But the dog would bark, and my heart would jump out of my chest, and it's a Chihuahua. You know what I mean? It was just like it caused me to have this just overdrive of emotion and defense mechanisms that were just. It wasn't helpful, and I had to change it. I mean, it's why I changed it. I was like, I can't sustain a family or a life or a career in this state of mind and this state of body.
I was just gonna say, some people I'm imagining could think, well, this pain is bad, but I can just bear through it, and
That's what a
be
tough guy
be a
thinks.
tough
Yeah.
guy, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to the thing you're just talking about there, that's a whole different ballpark or level
Yeah.
to deal with, So that's another incentive to yeah.
Yeah. I'm still going back, retracing my steps and making amends with people. So,
I
so
found that when I first started, it was huge,
yeah.
just kind of like splitting off to get through. And then when that all finally came up, and then remembering all this stuff that I had done and said, and that others had done and said, and just feeling this healthy regret over it, and wanting to go out, and it was time ready for forgiveness, to ask, to say I'm sorry, to say, it can't be forced, but when the time's right, and just asking for forgiveness. And that's a burden that we don't have to carry anymore. When we're ready to let go of that burden, you know, it was
Yeah.
huge for clearing so much, just simple forgiveness, but
Right.
it can't be false, and it can't be, at the right time. And it does not whatsoever, of course, say what they did was okay.
Yeah. No.
That's not
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah. Yeah.
about. That's where
No.
people confuse it or don't want to
Yeah.
consider it.
I'm still making amends to my partner. She's still struggling to like make sure this is real because she's only known me in pain. Right. And then once I started removing these things from my body, and using certain supplements, I didn't realize it was going to put my brain on fire and cause so much anxiety. And I would blame it on life and my father and my brother and her and my kids. And I didn't understand anxiety at that point. And so as you start unwinding that, and you're just like, man, you kind of shrink a little bit and cringe. You're like, I can't believe I did some of the things or said some of the things.
And it's understandable though, because there is so much trauma and so much pain. And when we don't have like integrated resources to know, we're doing the best we can. I mean, that said, abuse is never okay. At the same time, yes, that self responsibility is
Y-
absolutely vital,
Yeah.
but it's also understandable. And this whole thing you mentioned at the beginning too, about the early childhood kind of I would just call it trauma. And I think just even having a human birth is traumatic enough, and then it just goes up from there,
Yeah.
for the most part. So to me, this whole thing really only makes sense. That kind of thing is we put it in a big, more maybe metaphysical or spiritual picture that include potentially past lives, because some of the things just seem so random and ridiculous and helpful, and like, what explains this, and
Yeah.
for me, also being okay with not knowing as well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's some kind of comfort to know sometimes, but sometimes there's certain things, the mystery is great and grand. It's okay with being in the not knowing too. But yeah, so you want to address kind of the
Yeah.
spiritual level of things and how
Yeah,
you came
yeah,
to
because it's
terms with
super,
some
I
of
think
this
it's
stuff. Yeah.
super important for me. It's like, I was an atheist. Like, I mean, I was, evolution is real. And as you start learning DNA, you realize a DNA mutation, which it's theorized that the way that evolution occurred is that this DNA mutated into this and it made things better and it turned us into this perfect thing. But no DNA mutation turns into something good. You cannot find one example of it. Now you're telling me that billions of them have happened over time from a single cell organism to all these multi-cell organisms, not just us, but they're saying that everything came from single cell organisms. So now all these animals and butterflies and worms and everything that all work in this huge cycle of life all mutated from this. Well, we can't find any two cell organisms. There's no three cell organisms. There's one and multi. And then, okay, let's say now, okay, so every dog and its dog mate evolved at the same level to procreate, to create more dogs. And that happened with the worms and the butterflies and the humans and the apes and the, squirrels. It's just, I don't want to say stupid. I don't want to say stupid. It's stupid. Like, it's dumb to think that that's even possible once you just learn a little bit about how DNA mutations work. So, and then you ask AI about that and you say, well, what's the chance? Zero, right? They just tell you it's absolutely impossible. So as you start going through that process, and then so the
And
first
how it's
thing that
tied in with eugenics too, but that's a whole nother thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and
And the
yeah, I'm not
agendas that it's tied into with too. Yeah. But
yeah,
yeah,
I think a
continue.
lot of the problems that we're having with, and once again, the all is genderless. It's both male and female, and we all have the male and the female within us. But as you poison people with things like atrazine and hormone disrupting chemicals that are in our water, you're probably more likely to start shifting how that feels inside, right? Because it's, I don't have any problem at all with your choice in sexual partners. I think that that's all part of design. I just think that some people are being genetically put into that sort of situation. And yeah, so that's, but so if you look at twins, they're identical twins, right? Who have the exact same genes, and one can be gay and one is straight with a family and has no homosexual thoughts. And so I know that it's not genetic, but I think the capability is within us. Who knows how it manifests, but who cares? We're all here. We all belong here. And, it's that Old Testament way of thinking from that very jealous administrator that has made up some of these rules. And a lot of that is taken from previous texts like the Sumerian texts and Zoroastrianism and Hermeticism and, all these things compiled into this book that I think was given a sort of I don't know what the word is, theme that fit the culture that needed to use it at that time with the names and some of the locations and things like that. So, but I like to look at the similarities in all the religions, like Abraham and Brahman, same wife name, same kids' names, same story, right? And it's like it's just been taken into the Old Testament from Brahmanism or from Brahman. So there's a lot of similarities, and I like to look at the similarities, and and it's like it's all noise. There's the one source. There's Jesus. It's the Son that told us, that came down and gave us that information, gave us a way to live, and so that's where I put my energy there. But some of the things that happened, that came into my life, like I was in the Ozarks at a meeting with the energy business, and so first I had to get in the energy business, then I had to you know uh, qualify for this trip, being one of their top brokers, and then they had to service something that almost gave everybody food poisoning, and everybody threw up on this trip. And there's 50 or so brokers at this trip, and then I had to be curious enough to say, I wonder what happened there. And I said, maybe it was the pineapple. For whatever reason, it was the first thing I thought of. And then somebody told me pineapple contains bromelain. And I'm like, I thought it, but I don't know what bromelain is. I didn't know it contained I don't. And so I'm like, what's bromelain? I open up my phone. Bromelain is used as a commercial meat tenderizer to get rid of fibrosis in farm animals. And I had like a tear come out of my eye. Like I was like, holy cow. Like I didn't even know really about the fibrosis, and I knew collagen, but there were some things I was missing, and it was like put on my plate. I've meditated on this star Arcturus quite a bit. It's like, I know that we have a relationship, right? And so I go out to the river. Sometimes I microdose a little bit, and I'll do my grounding and my meditation, and staring at this star. And I open up my phone when I'm done, which probably shouldn't have done. But of the billions of videos I could have seen on the billions of things, the first thing that came up was this very obscure herb called Chianca piedra. It's called the stonebreaker herb. In the South Americas, they use it to get rid of kidney stones and oxalates. So I was like, I've never seen a video like that before, and never seen one since. And so it's just like too many weird coincidences. My name is Daniel. Daniel of the Old Testament could figure things out. He could interpret these things, right? And it's just a lot of really sort of interesting things. The reason why I chose atheism in the first place was, it just all led me down this path. And it's weird, and it's weird to say out loud, but I think people who get it, like, they get it, and you can't feel it till you open yourself up to feel it.
I think that's a great place to wrap up here, Dan. Thanks so much for joining again, and tell people where they could reach you.
Yeah.
Mention that your products again. You said you don't do coaching, but like, what other things do you have in the works that you'd like to
So
share?
if
And
somebody
then,
would like coaching, I'll definitely take the time to coach them. I
okay.
do a lot of free coaching. I offer a lot of people when I see them on social media in so much pain. I'm like, hey, come sit with me. And a lot of people just don't take me up on it. And I understand, because there are a lot of people out there who have no idea what they're doing in the chronic pain space. Like, they're clueless. When I look at what they're doing, I'm just like, you are not helping anybody. And I don't say anything, right? I just kind of keep it to myself. But so my website is UNDU, undo.me. And once again, it's U like Hindu, because a lot of Eastern philosophies in there as well, based but backed up by the science. So undo.me, and there you can find the world's greatest supplement called Flexibility Fuel. Right. So I even say world's greatest supplement right there. You should watch one of my YouTube videos on what the benefits of it are, based on how I do these fake pain podcasts with AI, with my AI tool. Right. And so it kind of validates the things that I'm saying, but everyone should do their own research. But then there's a thing called the chronic pain playbook. right? So you click on that, it'll take you to this platform that is free to join. It's kind of like a Facebook page, it's a community. And I host the program there, which is just a bunch of video series. It's very easy to digest, 100% free. Like everything there is free. If you want to support me, at some point, I'm going to put a donation button on there. That's, because whatever, but hopefully people try this supplement. It's only available in 48, in states in America, but I am so proud of it. Like I have helped so many people with it. Once they try it, they know it's helping them right quickly, and yeah, so that's where they can find me. And then all my social medias are UNDU Method. So LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Yeah. So that's how they
Cool.
can find me. Yeah. But
Sounds
if they want
good.
to interact with me, they just on the community, they can go there and ask me questions and I'll answer their questions.
Well, right on. Some of these links will be included in the show notes too. Why don't you take everybody out on a final message? Would you like to leave listeners and viewers with today?
Yeah. Get back to nature. We are nature. We are not moving at the speed of nature. You need to expose yourself to nature. It's super important. I mean, hug a tree. But ask AI what the benefit on a biochemical level and the mechanisms of action are to validate why you should be hugging that tree. So,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Well, may you all come to know the most optimal healing and beneficial health for yourselves and those around us and for all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free. Bye now.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.